Be advised, the opinions and views of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Good evening. Welcome to Expat Insights. I am your host Raju Mandhian, and here at Expat Insights, we take external views of internal successes by foreigners, expats, and immigrants who have made Philippines their home. Today, we are going to make a special move. We are going to a country which is really, really far away, and to represent that country, we have two guests who are Filipinos, of course, but they represent this country. Our first guest, the council of the country called Georgia, which just came to the fore in the last 20 years. Council Telmo Cunanan is, of course, a TV host, a columnist, and also an amateur aviator. And his partner, Norman Camungol, the Director of Business Affairs of the Georgia Philippine Club. So let's go to Georgia, and then we'll come back to our guests and say hello to them and ask them all about the country we are talking about tonight, Georgia. Let's wait for the video. There we go. So that's the glimpse of the country we are talking about, and it's colorful. It's also very musical. So the guest here, who represents the country, Georgia, which is somewhere near on the top of Iran and Iraq and south of Russia. But let me not preempt my guest. So welcome to Expat Insights, Council Kunanan and Director of Business Affairs, Norman.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So a little bit about the country first. Give us the overview of what Georgia is.
Sure. In a nutshell, well, Georgia is a former Soviet republic, but it's now an independent, free democracy, presidential democracy. It's about 70,000 square kilometers in size, which should place it about the size of Austria, or in Philippine terms, maybe 4/5 the size of Mindanao.
4/5?
The size of Mindanao.
That's really small.
So it's not a big country, but it's packed. It's packed with incredible sights to see, and it's surrounded by 3 countries. So you have Russia, you have Azerbaijan.
To the north.
Yes, to the north.
Yeah.
You have Azerbaijan, and you also have Armenia, and Turkey.
Ancient.
Four countries, some by 4 countries.
Very ancient sounding country. Yeah.
Yes. Actually, Georgian civilization goes back about 5,000-6,000 years.
Right.
And
longer than the Indian civilization.
well, that's
4,000.
yes. I mean, according to archaeologists who have done studies in Georgia. In fact, the tagline of Georgia's tourism campaign is "This is where Europe began." And the reason why for this tagline is because they have actually discovered the oldest hominid fossils in Europe here in Georgia, 1.8 million years old.
So let me first let the audience look at this thing.
Sure.
We have a drink from the country of Georgia. It's called cha-cha. I think it's quite relevant to what's happening here. A bottle of wine, and these are wine goblets. I thought they were like pusinas, but they're not. And of course, material for that. So, and the flag of Georgia.
Yes, that's the flag of Georgia.
Right. So the country by itself, the culture. When you go there, what do you feel? You feel like you're back in time? Do you feel like you are in a Mediterranean country or a European country?
Norman?
Oh yes, very much. Georgia is something like what we have for what we know about in the 18th century Europe, right? With all the castles.
I wasn't there.
Well, neither was I, but I saw I saw the photos, I saw the paintings.
Yeah.
But you've got cobblestone streets, you've got castles, you've got high walls.
Right.
All these things are still existing in Georgia.
Right.
But you've got an underlying technology which is 21st century all around. So Georgia is a country really in transition, and it's good for that country. They're really looking forward to moving into the 21st century.
I like what he said when he said country in transition, because as I mentioned earlier, it really is an ancient country, and for your viewers would be interested to know that it is actually one of the earliest Christian countries in the world. Or
it still is.
I mean, it's one of the first countries in the world to declare Christianity as a state religion.
Wow.
And this happened in the 3rd century A.D.
Yeah.
When Saint Nino came from Cappadocia in Turkey, and other missionaries, Christian missionaries from Syria, came and came to Georgia and Christianized the country.
Until today,
Yes,
Christianity is the major religion.
Orthodox Christian. In fact, I have with me something interesting to show. This is actually the map of Georgia. This is the shape of the map of Georgia on a red field, and you can see you can see a cross right on top.
Yeah, you hold it up.
So it's actually a very beautiful frame and image of, and it really embodies what Georgia is all about.
That's the cross on the flag?
Yes.
That's the cross on the flag too?
Yes.
Okay.
And of course, we have something here. This is the patron saint, one of the patron saints of Georgia. This is Saint George.
Really?
From which the name Georgia derives from.
Yeah.
Because Georgian is only Georgian in the English language, but in Georgia it's called, it has its own Georgian name.
Yeah, it has a strange alphabet too. It has a strange alphabet. And the language and the music that I just heard on the video, no?
Yes.
So
the alphabet is something that should be talked about, because it's actually one of 14 original scripts in the world.
We should talk about it, or we should
No,
not?
I mean, just to mention it, that it is one of 14 original scripts in the world. So that just goes to show you how old the Georgian language is.
Right, like Sanskrit and Latin.
Yes, it's one of
Greek.
those. Yes,
So
that has no relation to other
Is the alphabet
scripts.
different from Greek?
Correct. It actually predates Sanskrit, Latin, and all that, but because it's around the same, the alphabet was developed around the same time as the Babylonian alphabet was. Around that time.
Who was Babylonian Ahmed?
Around even before the Greeks.
Oh, before the Babylonian times, you mean?
Yeah.
Who was Ahmed? Did you mention
No,
times?
no,
Okay,
no.
okay, okay. So there was a guy called Babylonian Ahmed. No? Okay, so people on the street speak English.
Well,
Yeah.
the older generation speak Georgian and Russian,
Russian.
but increasingly English is being spoken, especially by the young people. Because as I mentioned, Georgia is a very forward-looking country. The government, the president is very forward-looking, and
Yeah.
they really want to integrate the country, you know, with the rest of the world, with the Western world, and English is the lingua franca
Yeah.
of the Western world, of
Yeah.
international business, international
Yeah.
education. So the way forward is to teach people English.
So tell me now, before we take a break, tell me about your involvement, not really your involvement, but your affair with the country, Georgia, because you seem to love it. I mean, from the
Yes.
moment I met you, you've been talking about it so passionately. So tell me how your love affair with a country so far away started.
Yes,
Council.
it started about 10, 12 years ago when
Yeah.
I made some very good Georgian friends who are...
Accidentally here in the Philippines?
No, actually it was on safari in South Africa. And I became very good friends with these two chaps from Georgia. It turned out to be, one of them turned out to be the author of this book,
And
Dr.
his name?
Kaka Shengelia, and he is the president of Caucasus University, a very good friend of mine.
Yeah.
And the other one is Mr. Liv. Oh, this is his picture behind. That's
Close up.
Dr.
Zoom in,
Shengelia.
yeah.
He's
Yeah,
a
zoom
very
in.
brilliant man, very amazing educator, and he's the president of the Caucasus University.
What is his name again? Shengelia.
Yes, Kaka Shengelia, Dr. Kaka Shengelia, and he wrote this incredible book called The History of Georgia.
Oh my, I wish I read that book.
No, this is something that you should read after
One
the
day,
show.
one day, yeah.
And also there was a man called Levan Akhvlediani, the president of the Georgian Volleyball Federation, who became a very good friend of mine.
What was the name?
Levan Akhvlediani.
These are really
These are
typical
Georgians. These are
Georgian
typical
names.
Georgian
They didn't have
names.
names like Mendoza or Gonzalez or Fernandez, whatever.
Yes. So back then there was no representation in the Philippines. So you know, I formed the Philippine Georgian Business and Friendship Association
right.
about 12 years ago, and it was increasingly called on to perform a lot of the duties of a consulate, like taking care of nationals, taking care of visiting Georgian
Right, right,
delegations. And so from there started this affair, as you call it, with Georgia, and I grew to love the country. And Norman and I have been to Georgia. I go every year, sometimes twice a year.
In the last 12 years, so what have you done? I mean, besides look after visiting
Plenty.
guests from-
The thrust of the consulate is really developing relations between the Philippines and Georgia. We're talking about economic relations, cultural relations, educational
Yeah.
relations, even sports relations. I'm actually
Yeah.
inking an MOU between the Philippine Volleyball Federation and the Georgian Volleyball Federation.
You're planning that ahead.
And I'm actually working that on that right now.
Well, when you got started, was there any initiative? Was there any financial or
Nothing, no,
material
no,
initiative?
it's
It's just
all-
not that, okay, I'm going to build relations between Georgia and Philippines. That's it.
No, it just happened actually, and we just really fell in love with the country and the people and the culture, and that's how it started.
And today you are the council.
Yes.
And you are the director of business affairs of the council. No?
Yeah.
So what is a council? You are a council AH. What does it stand for?
AH means ad honorem. So countries that have no representation in a country, sometimes they appoint an honorary consul, which is what I am. And an honorary consul is usually someone who is upstanding in society, who has connections, who can represent the country well. So, and what the honorary consul does is he takes care of let's say, visiting delegations
That's
from
one,
Georgia.
yeah.
Takes care of nationals in need of trouble, in need of help, for instance.
Yeah.
And promotes, as I mentioned, ties.
Like a make-do ambassador.
Well,
makeshift
in many
as well.
ways, sure.
In many ways, it is like a regular consul. The difference is that the legal consul is an employee of the government that it serves.
Right.
We're not on the payroll of the Georgian government. Everything
Because
is
you're ad
self-financed.
honorem, so it's for
Yeah.
free. It's for
So-
free, no?
That's basically the difference.
Prior to you starting the Georgian-Philippine Friendship Club Association and Club, no, what was the status of relationship between Philippines and Georgia?
There
Where were
were-
we and how much did we know?
I mean, there were relations. In
Yeah.
fact, we just celebrated the 20th anniversary of Philippine-Georgian relations
Right.
recently, a few months ago.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there was really no initiative being done on
Yeah.
the ground level to really bring the two countries together.
Right.
Example, in Tbilisi, in the capital of Georgia, there is a Philippine...
Tbilisi.
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 There is a Philippine
Yeah.
honorary consul, but the embassy, the
And he's
Philippine
a
embassy,
Georgian.
he's a Georgian.
He's a Georgian.
Yeah, it's my counterpart.
Yeah.
And but the Philippine embassy that takes care of Georgia is located in Ankara, in Turkey.
How does that happen?
No, because
because of the convenience.
Yes, and also because the Philippine government, like many other governments, can't afford to establish consulates or posts in every country.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really a lot being done until we formed this Philippine-Georgian Business and Friendship Association.
So bring us to today, now, Norman. No, what is happening currently between Philippines and Georgia? We'll take a break quickly, but maybe you can just give us a picture of current scenario between two countries. Yeah.
Okay. Right now, we just recently signed 2 MOUs with 2 Philippine universities to have an exchange program with the Caucasus University. The first one is San Beda.
No, San Sebastian.
I'm sorry,
Sebastian.
San Sebastian.
Yeah.
And the other one is Lyceum. Lyceum University of the Philippines. So there's going to be an exchange program of programs, content, faculty, students.
Wow.
So we're
and their partner is Caucasus University.
Caucasus University with Dr. Shengali here.
All right.
And this is the first, first ever such agreement between a Philippine educational institution and its Georgian counterpart.
The first part.
Yes.
In fact, it's first time in Asia.
First time in Asia, Georgian,
Southeast
Filipino,
Asia,
and
so
a
we are
Georgian
taking
and a
the
Southeast
lead as a
Asian.
country.
Yes.
Okay, we'll take a little break. Then we'll come back and ask you about businesses and opportunities and what Filipinos can get out of Georgia and what Georgians can get out of the Philippines. So let's take a break and come back and talk to Consul Cunanan and Norman Kamungol of the Georgian Council. I'm your host, Raju Mantian, and this is Expat Insights. Stay watching. Good evening. Welcome back to Expat Insights. I'm your host, Raju Mandian, and our guests tonight are from the country of Georgia, not really the country of Georgia, Filipinos who represent Georgia, the Council of Georgia, Council Cunanan, and the Director of Business Affairs, Mr. Norman. So we were talking about education before we wrapped up the break time. Huh? You said there's a partnership, content, faculty, and students. So give me a little more insights on what's happening there.
Well, as Norman was saying, there are 2 existing, MOUs between Caucasus University and major Philippine schools like San Sebastian Recoletos and Lyceum of Philippines University. Exchange of materials, personnel, and even helping them, because like Caucasus University has a new school of tourism, and one of our objectives is to have, let's say, an exchange of ideas, an exchange of personnel to help each other. Maybe Lyceum can help Caucasus University improve its tourism school. And tourism is a major industry in Georgia, and it was bound
Lyceum
to be,
can help Caucasus University.
Yes, they've got a major
Lyceum is
school.
Advanced.
Yes, they've got one of the best tourism schools.
I wouldn't know because I didn't study here. No,
they've got their own hotel.
Lyceum has its own hotel
where they teach.
CSB.
Yeah,
that's not. Yeah,
same thing. It's called the B.
The culture and the content. You said it's old Christian, and they were the first ones to adapt Christianity.
Right.
So thus, is there content, is there education, is there lifestyle, and the Constitution, is that influenced by the Christian religion too, just like it is in the Philippines?
Yes, very much so. Christianity is very deeply ingrained in the people's culture, and the people's souls. So it's really, it's very hard to separate the two. In fact, in the middle of Freedom Square in Georgia, you'll see the figure of of
Tbilisi.
Yes,
The city of Tbilisi.
In Tbilisi, you'll see the statue of St. George.
Yeah.
And this image adorns a lot of buildings, a lot of offices, a lot of homes in Georgia. So it really is deep-rooted in the culture.
And life in the schools and the streets is similar to any modern city. Are there Japanese cars and Apple computers on the streets? You said it's really modern in many ways. So is the education system also up to date?
Well,
21st century?
This is the thing. Under the present leadership of the country, under President Saakashvili, he really is a very forward-looking chief executive officer.
How do you pronounce his name?
Saakashvili, President Mikhail Saakashvili.
Saakashvili.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he is a very forward-looking chief executive. In fact, one of his pilot programs is the Teach and Learn with Georgia program under the Ministry of Education and Science. And in this program, what they're doing is they're recruiting volunteer teachers from all over the world to come to Georgia, all expenses paid, and they're housed with a local family, given a modest stipend, monthly stipend, to teach, no, not to teach, but to help Georgian public school English teachers teach their students Georgian.
Right.
English. In fact, I've sent about 10 Filipinos already.
Wow.
And 2 more on the way.
These are young Filipinos or experienced teachers.
You know, it varies. Some of them can be in their early 20s, some of them in their mid-30s. So the program accepts people out of college, even fourth-year students. They accept people looking for sabbaticals who really want to experience a different culture, a different experience. And there are 2 programs. There's a 1-year program and there's a 6-month program.
For Teach for Georgia.
Yes, and to teach to volunteer in this Teach with Georgia program. And it's open to all Filipinos. And of course, you have to qualify for it. Your English has got to be good. Spoken and written. And there is a vetting process. But as I mentioned, I've sent about 10. From Mindanao, from the Visayas, from up as far north as Baguio, 10 Filipinos already, and more applying every day.
All expenses paid and modest accommodation and a modest
What happens is, Raju, 6-month program or 10-month program, the Georgian government, let's say in a 1-year program, the Georgian government pays for your transport to Georgia and back, but after 6 months, if you avail the 1-year program, the Georgian government will pay for your airfare back to Manila or back to the Philippines so that you can have some R&R. And then you're housed with the local families, so it's a homestay program. So it's really immersion.
It must be a good experience.
Absolutely, because you really learn about the culture, and they also learn from you. So we are actually sending Filipino ambassadors to Georgia.
So is it a mutual thing? Are there Georgians here?
That's where Norman's MOU comes in.
That's where the MOU come in.
This is with San Sebastian or Lyceum?
Both.
Okay.
They have similar programs. But with Lyceum, it's more of the tourism aspect. With San Sebastian, it's more the business aspect. Now, what we're trying to do here is to get Georgians over here to attend Philippine schools, Philippine classes, to get immersed. And they're very much interested in learning how we do things here, go back to Georgia and try to apply it within that setting.
Great. So how about any text or any content? Are we importing any content from Georgia? Not people, but any subject matter, any discipline, any theories? Are we imbibing those in this culture? You're saying, is that possible? Is that on the plan in education?
We have several plans, including coming out with a lot of
curriculum and content.
Video, movies, try to absorb the culture, try to understand the culture.
In terms of content, I'm actually working on an MOU between the Agency of Protected Areas of Georgia, which falls under the Ministry of Environment Protection, and the Protected Areas and Wildlife Bureau of the Philippines.
Right.
And if you're talking about content, in this way, perhaps the 2 agencies can learn from each other. Because in Georgia, they actually have a very advanced conservation and wildlife effort there. I mean, and practice.
It seems to be nice and centrally located amongst mountains, and
Absolutely.
the weather must be amazing, and the sights must be beautiful. I mean, of course, we saw some, but I'm just imagining it to be something
very varied.
Like Fiddler on the Roof kind of a culture there.
Yeah,
and very varied, Raju. I mean, you've got the Caucasus Mountains, the highest mountain ranges. The highest mountain range in Europe, not the highest peak, the highest mountain range. So, and then you've got vast, fertile plains. You've also got a subtropical coast, which is on the Black Sea. So, very varied flora and fauna.
Let's talk about business between Georgia and Philippines. I've never met a Georgian, or I've never experienced a Georgian cup of wine or a cup of coffee. So tell me, like, what is happening in terms of merchant trade or investments? Is there something happening, or has something been done?
Well, at the moment, very little trade between the two countries.
Yeah.
And this is one of our
When you say very little, as like, is there something or there's not?
I mean, you know, occasionally you'll get someone who brings in some Borjomi water or maybe some Georgian wine, but very, very little. This is actually something...
Borjomi water is from the springs? Or
yes, it's a very famous Georgian
it's a very
mineral
famous,
water brand.
That's right.
Now,
whoa. Okay.
So this is one of the thrusts of the consulate, to really work on trade, and Norman is actually working directly on this initiative.
Well, we're trying to get some of companies here in the Philippines who are looking forward to looking outward, outside of the country, and see if they can invest in another country that has a central location. We are promoting Georgia as a central location, you know, near to Europe, near to Africa, near to the Central Asian republics, near to the Middle East.
Yeah.
So we've been talking to some companies here. We've made some progress. We've brought their products over to Georgia.
Filipino products to Georgia.
Filipino products to Georgia, food, cosmetics.
How many times have you both been there?
Well, I go every year. I go every year, sometimes twice a year.
I've been once there.
So when you go there, you being a businessman and a manufacturer,
we always have a bag full of goods.
Negotiante. When you go there, and do you go there like, man, I can do this, or man, I can buy that franchise, or hey, Jollibee will work here. You probably go through that insights, because I, as a businessman, when I travel, I know this will work, that will not work here. So when you go there, what did you feel would work out of the Philippines to Georgia? What kind of industries, products, or business models?
Well, for one thing,
they
don't have much of what we take for granted here, seafood.
Okay, that's a possibility. That's a potential.
The next part would be, in the food industry, that's a lot. There's a big market there. Another thing would be in the area of personal care.
Right, Ricky Reyes. Salons.
They actually have very little manufacturing in Georgia. That's the problem. I mean, a lot of their products, let's say personal care products and stuff, are all imported from Turkey,
Germany,
from Europe. So there's very little manufacturing. So there is opportunity for people who want to come in, companies set up in Georgia, and not just leave Georgia as a market, because the Georgian market is about 4.5 million people.
Right,
but
small.
But then you can also supply to the neighboring countries. I mean, Armenia is about 3 million. Azerbaijan, where there's a lot of money because of oil.
Right.
You have about 10, 12 million. So it actually is the easiest place, the easiest entry point of the Caucasus region. And Raji, if I may add, Georgia was mentioned by the World Bank as one of the top 5 areas, the best areas to do business in Europe. Because this administration under the current president has really done a lot to curb corruption, make things transparent, make business, let's say registering a company, incorporating very easy, and it's all very transparent. Very little red tape.
I saw that. I went through some of the news reports on Georgia, and yes, I saw the World Bank statement about it being an easy country to set up business.
They're calling it the rebirth of Georgia, because coming from the chaos of the early post-Soviet years, Georgia has really reinvented itself. I have to say that it really is a model for curbing corruption, and say on air that the Philippines can learn a lot from Georgia in this regard.
We are doing good. I have a claim to make about Philippines. I'm happy with what we're doing good. But let me go and ask you this. No? So what is the main source of income of Georgians? What do they live on? Farming, manufacturing, service? What is their main source of income? I know you brought me products to show here, a bottle of wine, but what do they live on? What do they thrive upon? Philippines is agriculture, pineapples, apples, and BPOs, of course, today, no? But in Georgia, what is the main source of income?
Well, it's basically an agriculture-based economy.
Right.
And so, I mean, these products are I mean, this is a major export of Georgia. It's wine. And this comes actually from the eastern part of the country. And, you know, Georgia actually makes fantastic wine. And
thus grapes and
they have a lot of vineyards, yes, a lot
apples,
of fruits. And their water is actually very good. They actually export a lot of their water.
Amazing, you know, it being such, and then?
Well, with exports from Georgia, agriculture is a big part of the country. In many ways, it's similar to this country, to the Philippines. Around 1/5 of their population also work as OFWs.
Oh, okay, okay, that's a large one. That's a large one.
Yes.
So you're saying 4 million.
4.5 million. 4.5.
One member of the
Georgians
family is
who work
out
overseas.
of town usually.
There are a lot
Yeah.
of Georgians who live and work overseas, just like we have here in the
Filipinos.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
in Western
Yeah.
Europe, in Russia, in North
What does
America.
What does it take? What does it take to set up a business in Georgia? If I were Chowking or Jollibee, what does it take, and how would it be different for me to go and set up shop in Georgia?
Well, I mean,
What do I require? $100,000, $1 million, or just go there by myself and?
yes. I mean, there are a lot of requirements, but I mean, this much I can say. The process is very, very easy and very fast,
Yeah.
and there's very, very little corruption. In fact, for more information, if there are interested parties out there, Norman and I are always on call. We have a website with all the information, www.georgia.ph,
Right,
and
okay.
we're ready to assist investors
yeah.
who want to go there with information they need.
So
We're
no
very
minimum
easy.
requirements, no
I mean,
visa hassles.
I mean, there are.
There
are.
Like any country, if you're a
Yeah.
foreigner coming in, there are requirements. But what I can say is that it has been made very easy for people to come in and do business.
tax structures compared to Philippines, taxation.
Well, okay, with taxation, the potential investors are given a lot of incentives. They are given almost tax-free for the first, I think, 2 years.
Yes, yes.
2 years. No taxes to be paid, so everything goes to the
Like
investor.
here in the Philippines, we have so many incentives for foreign direct investments. We have free zones, we have special export.
I'm glad you
Yeah.
mentioned free zones, because in Georgia, this is a relative new concept for them. And so this is an area that I hope that the Philippines can help Georgia in, the establishment of free zones, of special economic zones, which we have actually become very good at. We've, the PEZA has been doing an excellent job at doing at establishing these zones and managing them.
Right.
And Norman has a lot of experience here. So this is actually a good idea.
So let me summarize this for what I hear and see. If I were a potential investor or somebody who wanted to do business with Georgia, number one would be marine products for them out of the Philippines.
Trade,
that would be
yes.
one. Yeah,
Trade,
trade. No?
yeah.
But especially focus on marine products because there are no oceans around them, right?
No,
and then maybe finished goods. Yeah. Packaged goods like what Del Monte has now.
That would work,
Maybe small industries or maybe fast food chains. Food and fashion would be a potential because it's a brand new country. Would that be? And if I were to trade in, bring in stuff from Georgia, you're looking at agricultural products, some part of their culture design, and some curriculum. So is there anything else? How about the infrastructure going out to the neighboring countries? If I go set up shop, a manufacturing house, say electronics or apparel, and I want to cater to the neighboring countries, how is the railway, transportation, shipping system out of there? Easy, expensive?
No, I mean, it's slowly being improved. I mean, the infrastructure is being improved as we speak. But Georgia maintains very good relations with Armenia, with neighboring countries like Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. So it is definitely a very good base for putting yourself and then reaching out to bigger markets nearby, to expanding your business interests.
Yeah, like Amsterdam is a hub.
Right.
Germany is the hub in Europe, right? So people ship from there. There's another country in the Mediterranean which is a hub.
Yes. The thrust of this government is really accountability and transparency and low corruption and really not eliminating but reducing red tape so that things are more efficient. And I think what the government is patterning itself after is maybe establishing Georgia as a Singapore type base for the Caucasus, that entire Caucasus region.
Thus, lesser tariffs,
yes.
lesser tariffs,
Making it services oriented, banking, a good center for banking because graft and corruption is very low.
So what is the GDP of Georgia and what's the per capita income compared to, and then let's compare it to Philippines, see how it looks.
It's the Philippines at the moment still enjoys higher figures. So I mean,
because
Georgia is coming
tiny,
up. Yes, but the thing about Georgia is it's a small population, and so it's probably easier to manage than the Philippines with our 100 million people.
Cost of living there. Today in the Philippines, it costs you $1,000 to have a decent life a month, right?
Yes.
And the per capita income is about that. It's about $10,000 to $12,000.
Let's put it down to layman's terms. When you're in Georgia,
Yeah.
and let's say you go there as a visitor and you spend, you buy stuff, you do some shopping, you go to a restaurant, the costs are not very much different from the costs you would have here.
Right, so it's almost like
so,
Philippines.
you know, comparable.
And when you go on the streets, you feel people are rich. Like you go to Switzerland, you know that, hey, there is money here. you can smell it. You don't see it, you smell it. People
It is
don't
there.
talk about that.
It is there.
In Georgia, you can smell the money, and we can. It's good for plucking out of Georgia.
Well, I wouldn't say about
Not really
plucking like feathers, but
low-hanging fruits. You know, get the money from out there.
yeah. But I mean, there are opportunities in Georgia. There is money to be made if you have the vision, if you have the courage, and if you have the if you go in properly. There are there are opportunities, and if you go there, and like for instance, in my case, I go there once or twice a year, and every time I go back, there's some new establishment, there's something else happening, there's some growth, and so you can see that there is development in the country.
Well, one thing that when we visited there,
when was this?
Oh, it's about 2 years ago.
Right.
His last time was 2 years ago.
2 years ago, and we saw only in the capital city in Tbilisi, only 3 McDonald's.
Oh, well, they're there. These guys are there.
Yeah, the 3 McDonald's, right?
Zara. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
For the entire country, 4.5 million people, only 3 McDonald's.
All right. So
And I was looking at, hey, there's an opportunity
There's
for
room for
Jollibee.
Jollibee,
yeah.
And they're actually, like, things are happening. They're actually opening their first mall, the first real mall. Georgia's opening
And we've got
sometime
Scads
late
malls
this
here.
year or early next year. So things are happening. But 2 years ago, even last year, there was no mall. There was nothing like that. So
This
things are
is
happening very
exciting to
fast.
be there. It seems like fun to be
Like a
there.
frontier, yes.
Hey guys, folks, let's take a little break, and then we'll come back and talk to you about what you guys are doing, what you're planning for the future of increasing the bilateral trade and relationship between Georgia. So let's take a few minutes break and come back and talk to Council Kunanan and Director of Business Affairs Norman Kamungol of Georgia. This is Expat Insights, and I'm your host Raju Mandian. Stay watching. Good evening. Welcome back to Expat Insights. I'm your host Raju Mandian, and we are talking to Council Kunanan of Georgia and the Director of Business Affairs for Georgia. And we just finished talking about the educational interaction between Georgia and Philippines and the business that can happen. Let's talk about the fun part. Let's talk about if there is scuba diving in Georgia, or if there's something else. Let's talk about tourism.
Well,
what's fun about Georgia?
Well, it's more fun in Georgia. But seriously, folks.
No, would you zoom in on this? It may not be more fun in Georgia, but this dish looks really delicious. Oh yeah, see, there you go. I want to have this for lunch. Huh?
No, I mean, this is definitely.
So let's talk about.
I mean, Georgia is an incredible country. It's small, but there's so much to do in sea. For starters, ecotourism is incredible. It's a big flora and fauna and diversity of the landscape.
Because it's amongst mountains.
Yes, mountains,
Correct.
plains,
Valleys,
sea,
and
and all
lakes,
that.
Yeah.
They also have a lot of beautiful Christian monasteries over there, World Heritage sites.
Right, good for Filipinos.
Of course, I mean, especially for religious tours,
right.
And then of course culinary delights.
Oh yeah,
we have wine. We have excellent wine. We've got incredible food. You know, a lot of people ask me, is Georgian food similar to Russian food? And the first thing I say is, it's completely different.
I wouldn't know the difference.
Not to say Russian food isn't good.
Yeah,
I like Russian food, but Georgian food is exceptional because it's a fusion of Turkish, of Persian, of its own indigenous cuisine. So all mixing in Georgia. So you have incredible food that have rich sauces, and meats, and wines, and spices.
You're making me hungry. You're really
I'm
making
getting hungry as well.
I know. Tell me about your first experience, Norman. When you went there, when you landed there, how do you feel? Like, you go to Bali, it's a different feeling. You go to Thailand, it's a different feeling. You go to India, it's a different feeling. You come to Philippines. What do you feel when you go to Georgia? Like, where am I? Where do you go?
Well, when I first arrived in Georgia, the first thing I noticed was that I'm the only one with small eyes here.
Or black hair. Black hair.
Oh, black hair, right. Yeah. And it was kind of a different feeling for me, because normally when I go out, I would see Asians as well.
Yeah.
I would be familiar with the surroundings. But here you would see, immediately as soon as you arrive, you'd feel medieval.
Yeah. Okay. You feel like you're back in time.
You're back in time, but with glass walls.
But the structures are modern.
The structures are modern, but the architecture is medieval.
So if there was something that you want to bring in from Georgia here, I'm not talking about business or education, I'm talking about a certain part of the culture. Like if I go to Latin America, I want to bring in the music, and I want to bring in the fact that, hey, Latin Americans are fun-loving.
Right.
No? You're in the Philippines and you want to bring out the hospitality of the Filipino culture and take it to India or to Russia. What would you bring in terms of promoting Georgia to the Philippines here? What would you bring?
Well, I'd bring the Georgian soul.
The soul?
Yes, because soul encompasses all that. It encompasses their warmth. It encompasses the depth of how they view life and the depth of their beliefs, their passion for their country. It encompasses their food, their wine, their song, their
soul
dance.
Of Georgia.
Absolutely, it's about soul. When you talk about Georgia, I mean, it's hard to encapsulate the country in a few sentences, a few words, but really it's all about soul. And part of what we're doing in the consulate is really pushing tourism. And last March, I actually led a delegation of travel operators from here, major travel companies, in partnership with Qatar Airways Manila. And we brought them there for about 5 days and showed them the best of what Georgia has to offer. In the hope that these guys are now going to, with our help, organize tours from here to Georgia. In fact, I'm working on one with Interlink. It's an old travel agency in Manila, one of the most
I've heard of
respected
them.
in Manila. And we're going to start the first tours to Georgia maybe the end of this year or early next year, in time for the winter.
So I
some skiing.
want to ask you some practical questions, but there's a spiritual question I want to ask.
Sure.
You mentioned soul.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you something about it later, so keep yourself ready. Tell me, how much is it going to cost to go to Georgia, and how long will that tourism package take, and how do you go to Georgia? What are the visa requirements?
Okay, visas, Filipinos can get visas upon arrival.
Okay, so you just chop it there. How about
It's
Indians?
about $35, yes. For India, I think it's also applicable. I think visas upon arrival.
As long as we bring chicken curry along. No?
Well, I haven't seen an Indian restaurant in
Mutton.
Georgia. Some
That's another
mutton. But hopefully, who knows? Every time I come to Georgia, something's new.
Okay.
So
visa upon arrival.
Sorry, visa upon arrival, and a very easy connection via Qatar Airways, via Doha, straight from Doha.
So Manila, Doha.
Tbilisi. Yeah.
16 hours?
From here to Doha about 9, from Doha to Tbilisi maybe another 5, via Baku. So
about 16,
Azerbaijan.
20 hours,
Yeah, 15 hours,
Transit
16,
time,
yeah. And then the tour would take about maybe 10, 12 days. And the cost, maybe I'm looking at, cost would be maybe $2,500 US.
So you go up the mountains, down the valleys of...
Yes, I mean, the thing about Georgia is that the highlight really, when you talk about structures, ancient structures, are the monasteries. We're talking about 5th century, 10th century, 14th century Christian monasteries. And a lot of these are located in really beautiful, stunning places, like in the Caucasus Mountains, or in valleys, or in semi-arid lunar landscapes. So very, very stunning and very untouched still. I mean,
how about
not
hotels and stuff like that? How expensive?
It is available, and I mean, the infrastructure is being developed, but I have to be honest with you, it is not as developed as you would have in other markets, which is nice, because in other markets it's too developed, too commercial.
Like certain countries in the world, they've converted their old castles and palaces into hotels. Has that happened in Georgia?
In Georgia?
Yeah.
Well, not so much the old palaces and castles, but old homes. I've been to some homes when they turned into some sort
Where
of...
did you stay at? Where did you folks stay at?
Me?
Yeah?
Well, I stay in all sorts of places. I stay in, well, not in all
What are the best places?
No, I stay in inns. I stay in inns. I've stayed in the Holiday Inn.
So what is the best place you stayed in, which was the most fun? I mean, like...
It depends. It depends on where you on where you are. Like in Batumi, which is on the Black Sea coast, you have the Sheraton is there. In Tbilisi, you have the Marriott. The Kempinski is going to open up, I think, next year. So things are happening, and the infrastructure is improving.
And when is this package that you're putting together?
I'm sorry?
When is this
travel? Well, we're looking at either the end of this year or early next year. So it'll be winter, but for those people who want to learn to ski or who are into skiing,
Whoa.
Georgia has very good skiing and very cheap.
Whoa, that sounds fun.
I'm looking at maybe 1/4 the price of skiing in Europe.
Tell me, Council Kunanan,
Sure.
about Georgians in the Philippines. Are there any? If there are any businesses, and what are they doing?
Well, you've got two here.
Oh, you guys are Georgians. Okay, I didn't know that. No, but really, what about Georgians here? And
Yes. There aren't many Georgians in the country. There are some who work with ADB. And
Yeah.
they are officers of ADB assigned
Yeah.
here in Manila. I mean, they have a tour here. And this is because Georgia is considered by the ADB as part of Asia.
yeah.
Whereas, I mean, other agencies would consider Georgia part of Europe. So it really is, Georgia really straddles Asia and Europe.
So if Filipinos wanted Georgians to come and impose some of their culture and their habits and their products and stuff, how would we entice them to come to the Philippines? So because we're also promoting Philippines, right? Which is my country, not yours. Yours is Georgia.
No, I mean, if I were promoting tours to the Philippines,
Yeah, how would I
which
bring
my
them in?
counterparts in Georgia are doing, the biggest draw that the Philippines has are our beaches.
All right, scuba diving.
Because
and,
I mean, Georgia only has one coast. It's a Black Sea coast, and the Black Sea isn't well. It's not as beautiful, let's say, as other bodies of water, as other marine bodies of water. And definitely our white sand beaches, our coconut trees, our
the usual, the sun and the sand.
our seafood, and the warmth that comes with that really attracts a lot of Georgians. Yes.
Council, I'm done questioning to you and asking about Georgia. It's been wonderful. If there's anything that I should have asked you that my audience would like to know about Georgia, is there something you want to tell me about Georgia?
Well, I'd like to invite Georgians, Filipinos, to come and visit Georgia. Come and visit my country, and and I guarantee you will fall in love with the people, with their heritage, their culture, the warmth of their hospitality, and their soul. So please contact us at the embassy, at the consulate, www.georgia.ph. Norman Camungol, Director Norman Camungol, and I are available 24/7 to answer your questions and to show you more about Georgia, and hopefully you'll make the trip.
Director.
Yeah. Well, so what Consul said, the soul of Georgians is the thing to be, to realize and to understand and to experience. And I had first-hand experience of that, and it's beautiful. And the passion really there is really into the cooking. It's really into the activities, the events, the magic of the country itself. So please, if you have the time to visit any country in the world, visit Georgia.
It's more fun in Georgia.
That sounds like a plug. So here's my last question.
Sure.
You finished plugging, no?
Sure.
So every culture, every country, every civilization has a certain underlying philosophy. Though some of us are influenced by Christianity and Buddhism, what is that thing about Georgia? A little philosophy, a little cultural trait which you can share with me tonight. Like Filipinos, we are friendly. Yeah, we're very strong in terms of family. You look at India, which is a foreign country for me. You look at them; they believe in struggle and forgiveness at the same time. You look at America; they believe in straightforwardness and action. No, and then different things. So, what about Georgia and Georgians? Is
Good
something
question.
that we'd like to
leave
as an insight for my watchers.
That's an excellent question because this is why I love Georgia so much, because as a Filipino, I can relate to Georgia. Everything you mentioned about Filipinos, love for family,
it's the same.
love for culture, love for life. It is exactly the same in Georgia. The bonds that hold people together, bind families together, friends together, is there in Georgia. Very powerful.
It's quite similar. It's quite
Yes,
similar.
very powerful.
All right, Senor Kunanan, pleasure having you on
As you
Expat
say in
Insights.
Georgia, madlop.
Madlop.
Yeah, thank
Madlop
you.
means that runaway mad.
Thank you.
Norman,
Madlop.
pleasure having you here. So that was Council Kunanan and Norman Camungol of Georgia, and I'm your host Raju Mandian. I hope you enjoyed the show. Next week we'll see you and we'll talk about music that matters, and we'll have two guests. One is a Frenchman and another one is a Japanese person. They'll talk about music, and we'll leave you a little clip. We'll leave you with a little clip about Georgia. Good night and mabuhay. of the Georgia-Philippine Club. No? So let's go to Georgia, and then we'll come back to our guests and say hello to them and ask them all about the country we are talking about tonight, Georgia. Let's wait for the video. There we go. So that's the glimpse of the country we are talking about, and it's colorful. It's also very musical. So the guest here, who represents the country, Georgia, which is somewhere near on the top of Iran and Iraq and south of Russia. But let me not preempt my guest. So welcome to Expat Insights, Council Kunanan, and Director of Business Affairs, Norman.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So a little bit about the country first. Give us the overview of what Georgia is.
Sure. In a nutshell, well, Georgia is a former Soviet republic, but it's now an independent, free democracy, presidential democracy. It's about 70,000 square kilometers in size, which should place it about the size of Austria, or in Philippine terms, maybe 4/5 the size of Mindanao.
4/5?
The size of Mindanao.
That's really small.
So it's not a big country, but it's packed. It's packed with incredible sights to see, and it's surrounded by 3 countries. So you have Russia, you have Azerbaijan.
To the north.
Yes, to the north.
Yeah.
You have Azerbaijan, and you also have Armenia, and Turkey.
Ancient.
Four countries, surrounded by 4 countries.
Very ancient sounding country. Yeah?
Yes. Actually, Georgian civilization goes back about 5,000-6,000 years.
Right.
And
longer than the Indian civilization.
Well, that's
4,000.
Yes, I mean, according to archaeologists who have done studies in Georgia. In fact, the tagline of Georgia's tourism campaign is, this is where Europe began. And the reason why for this tagline is because they have actually discovered the oldest hominid fossils in Europe, here in Georgia, 1.8 million years old.
So let me first let the audience look at this thing.
Sure.
We have a drink from the country of Georgia. It's called cha-cha. I think it's quite relevant to what's happening here.
Yeah.
A bottle of wine, and these are wine goblets. I thought they were like pusinas, but they're not. And, of course, material for that. So, and the flag of Georgia?
Yes, that's the flag of Georgia.
Right. So the country by itself, the culture, when you go there, what do you feel? You feel like you're back in time? Do you feel...
Be advised, if the opinions and views of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Good evening. Welcome to Expat Insights. I am your host, Raju Mandhian. And here at Expat Insights, we take external views of internal successes by foreigners, expats, and immigrants who have made the Philippines their home. Today, we are going to make a special move. We are going to a country which is really, really far away. And to represent that country, we have two guests who are Filipinos, of course, but they represent this country. Our first guest, the council of the country called Georgia, which just came to the fore in the last 20 years. Council Telmo Cunanan is, of course, a TV host, a columnist, and also an amateur aviator. And his partner, Norman Kamungol, the Director of Business Affairs, feel like you are in a Mediterranean country or a European country?
Norman?
Oh, yes, very much. Georgia is something like what we have for what we know about in the 18th century Europe, right? With all the castles.
I wasn't there.
Well, neither was I. But I saw I saw the photos, I saw the paintings.
Yeah.
But you've got cobblestone streets, you've got castles, you've got high walls.
Right.
All these things are still existing in Georgia.
Right, right.
But you've got an underlying technology, which is 21st century, all around. So Georgia is a country really in transition, and it's good for that country. They're really looking forward to moving into the 21st century.
I like what he said when he said country in transition, because as I mentioned earlier, it really is an ancient country, and for your viewers would be interested to know that it is actually one of the earliest Christian countries in the world. Or
it still is?
I mean, it's one of the first countries in the world to declare Christianity as a state religion.
Wow.
And this happened in the 3rd century AD.
Yeah.
When Saint Nino came from Cappadocia in Turkey, and other missionaries, Christian missionaries from Syria, came to Georgia and Christianized the country.
Until today,
Yes,
Christianity is a major religion.
Orthodox Christian. In fact, I have with me something interesting to show. This is actually the map of Georgia. This is the map of Georgia on a red field, and you can see you can see a cross right on top.
Yeah, you hold it up.
So it's actually a very beautiful frame and image of, and it really embodies what Georgia is all about.
That's the cross on the flag?
Yes.
That's the cross on the flag, too?
Yes.
Okay.
And of course, we have something here. This is the patron saint, one of the patron saints of Georgia. This is St. George.
Really?